Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our solar workshop. Technically, this workshop name is So You Have Solar, What's Next? And we just want to gauge from the audience, how many of you have solar already? Show of hands. Okay, 1, 2, 3 at least. Okay, so a couple who are interested in solar and 3 at least who already have solar. Great. So we are going to touch on solar a little bit in this conversation, but not as much as we would if we do a site visit with you and go through the whole rundown of how solar works. That's typically something we cover in a different workshop. So we're going to lightly touch on solar for those of you who are interested in that. And we're mostly going to be focusing in this class on all of the other aspects of electrifying your life that go along with solar, what to do when you're figuring out how to buy an EV, how to install a charger, how many panels you might need to power your electric vehicle, switching off of other fossil fuels. So that's going to be a large focus of the class, and we'll also touch on battery backups as well.
We have a lot of people calling us right now who we've installed solar at their house, and now they're interested in adding more because they're getting an electric vehicle or they've adding heat pumps. So it's a conversation that we have with you anyway when we sit down and we start to talk about what your entire energy consumption looks like. Well, now more and more people are starting to see that they can get off of fossil fuels on the heating side and on the transportation side. So that's really, we're gonna focus on what those opportunities are.
Great. So with that, we'll get into it. And you're talking with Grassroots Solar. So your presenters this evening are my father, Bill LaBerge, and myself, Danielle LaBerge. And it's a family-run business. We're based in East Dorset. And I joined the company 5 years ago when it looks like my dad was having just too much fun doing all this solar stuff and I had to get in on the action. I never wanted to be a woodworker when he was doing fine woodworking, but as soon as he started doing the solar, I was like, when can I come work for you? And transitioned from a career in ecology and more management of ecosystems for national parks, and this was a great transition. So I love putting up solar for people. It's like putting up Christmas lights, but on a really big scale. And I actually really like putting up Christmas lights. That was something I was looking forward to doing with my dad. So we do that every day, basically.
And I was a custom furniture maker for 26 years, as she mentioned. I had been volunteering at Solar Fest for 20 years. And just thought that was a great idea, and kind of watching it as the industry grew. And then when my wife and I, we bought a house in Dorset so that our kids could go to Burton Academy. Once they went off to college, we said, well, where are we gonna live now? As it turns out, we want to live exactly where we are. Well, then now that we're going to live here permanently, let's put up the solar, let's put in the garden. So put up the solar, hired a local company, and we had a party for all our friends and neighbors because they need to do it too. And the company said, you should come work for us. And so the next day I had lunch with them, and that's when I started working with them. So worked with them for 2 years, and then I really wanted to get into batteries. I wanted to get NABCEP certified and be able to, to branch out. And so they said, well, why don't you start your own company? So I started Grassroots Solar. And so when I talk about NABCEP certification, that is a national certification. In Vermont, there's no statewide certification. So if you're looking to have somebody do some work, there's been an occasional bill that goes through legislature to try and get some Vermont certification. It hasn't really happened much. So we just feel that a national certification is a good thing to have. So Danielle and I are both NABCEP certified. And then you'll see with a lot of the vendors, the companies that we represent, when you have to get certified to use their equipment. That way they'll make good on their warranties. The only way that most of these battery manufacturers will uphold their warranty is if you've gone through all the certification trainings and everything. So we make sure that we're certified in all the equipment that we're using.
That's right. And, a big component of those trainings is keeping up to date with all the changing electrical code. So the electric code changes every 3 years. And so we stay up to date on that and how solar and batteries tie into the electric code so that we're, all legal and above board. And to get started really quickly, brief 30,000 foot view of how solar works. We won't go in too great detail into this, but the basic idea is the sun shines on the panels, which are on your roof or on the ground. It is knocking electrons through the wires and creating electric power. There are inverters mounted on every panel, which turn the power into the same type of power usable in your home. And you're able to power things directly, run your laundry during the day. The other thing that happens is there's a meter on your house, and any solar that you're not using when you generate it, it is counted by your meter and sent out to the electric grid through the telephone wires. And so either way, whether you use it on point or whether you export it, you get credited, and your account shows the credit for that power you produced. So we'll touch on net metering a little bit more later. That's the basic idea. And it makes a lot of other stuff possible. So we do have installs that we do on the roof. That is the easiest to install on because it's an existing structure. We're constrained by the direction your roof faces, what type of material you have on it. We can't install on slate. And we do have to leave, fire lanes for access for firefighters so they could get up and cut a vent in the chimney if they had to, safety features. So sometimes the roof is not the most suitable, but often it is, and it is the most cost effective for an install. We can also install on the ground. There are some added costs when we do, but we can often site the solar in a better position facing due south with a nice sunny field in front of it on the north side of a field. And these arrays are modular, so we can put in as many panels as you need to offset your bill. There is added cost for the steel racking that we build and the concrete, or we can also have ground-driven ground screws, which, there's extra equipment coming in, as well as the copper wire to run in a trench over to your power supply. And we also do pole mounts, which are a little higher off the ground. They are an added expense above the cost of a basic ground mount, but they are higher off the ground, more suitable for high snow loads. You can also manually adjust the tilt of these poles. So they stay facing south, but they can be adjusted flatter in the summer and steeper in the winter with a manual crank that can be turned by one person. So it's easier to service them, and they're a little more versatile. So smaller footprint, more versatile, and a little more costly to install. You want to add anything to the mounts?
No,
We're
we'll
gonna
talk about the inverters.
We're gonna move right on. We do, in some cases, get requests for off-grid installations. So this would be if you want to skip the utility entirely. Maybe you live in a very remote area where they would charge you an arm and a leg to get power out to your location. That's the case with this install. And So in that case, we install a larger solar array that is enough to power everything that you want to run during the darkest month of the year. So that would be December for us. And you also need to have on hand enough batteries or batteries and generator capacity to hold enough power for multiple days. And effectively in the winter, that's our critical design window. We want to be able to make sure we can power everything that you need in the winter. And then we know that for an off-grid system in the summer, you're making way more power than you end up using. But that's the trade-off, is if you don't want the utility connection at all, it ends up costing more, but you have that freedom. And
So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the inverters. Like Danielle said, we're not going to get too heavily into the minutia of these, but what as it pertains to our conversation here, the development of the inverters are kind of the brains of the system. And so the one on the upper right, the Enphase microinverter, is what we're using on any time we're putting something up on a rooftop, because they have a what they call rapid shutdown. It's one of the new laws that if the power goes out, the solar on your roof has to stop working within a fraction of a second. So these microinverters operate that way. When they detect that there's no longer grid, they automatically turn off. So it's a safety feature. It's also helps with shade mitigation. So if part of your system is shaded early in the morning and the rest is not, it'll allow each panel to act autonomously. So that's a little bit about the micro inverters. On the bottom left, the white inverter, that's a SolarEdge. And what they've started to do is they're coming up with, so we're going to be talking about electric vehicles, and you're going to want to charge your electric vehicle. They actually have, so what happens is, as Danielle described, the solar panel puts out DC power. We use AC power in our house. So you have to take the inverter, switch it over to AC. Well, then if you want to charge your electric car, you're plugging into the AC, but you're charging the DC batteries. So you're switching over twice and you lose some efficiency. So what SolarEdge has done is they've created a inverter that will take the DC of your solar and then directly use that DC to charge your car. So it's a DC to DC charger, much more efficient. So you're starting to see some interesting technology. What we're coming into is an era where Danielle was describing net metering. We're starting to look at bi-directional energy. So your solar is powering your house. It's also feeding out into the grid. Well, the grid is also where you're getting your power from. So the transformers are now bi-directional, and these inverters are bi-directional. We're gonna get to the point now. You've probably seen advertisements for the Ford F-150, the new electric Ford pickup truck, that they said, you'll be able to plug it into your house, and during an outage, you can run your house off of your truck. Well, so that in order to do that, there has to be a certain piece of hardware, and it's going to be one of these inverters that's going to take that DC power in the batteries of your truck and convert it to AC. So the inverters are really where we're seeing a lot of pretty intense development and steps forward. The one on the upper left is the Solarc, and we're using that on a lot of our battery installations because it really has the capability to control generators, solar, grid, so you can program it how you want your house to run. And so it's the technology is really advancing with the inverters.
that's right. And the inverters are enabling us to have a greater monitoring capability. So this is a monitoring platform that you would see for one of our solar installations. Every single panel on the installation has its own microinverter, and those microinverters all report back through this monitoring portal so that you have a good idea of how much your system is producing. The monitoring also shows how much the home is consuming. So it'd be the blue bars, and the green is production. And so you end up with greater capabilities to understand, how is my system performing day to day? And so for every solar install, we are looking for an internet connection that you, the customer, supply for your monitoring setup. And then and this is another monitoring setup, so it would report, how much each panel is producing. So it's individual, and they're all within a certain range, but there's individual reporting that gives us more service and maintenance options. And it also makes it easier for the warranty to be serviced. And this is the Solarc monitoring. Did you want to highlight?
Yeah, so this is, and I know we're all getting sick and tired of having various apps, and solar and batteries are the same thing. You're going to have an app that you can use to see. This is that when Danielle showed that slide earlier of the off-grid house, this is the monitoring for that. So you can see the capacity has 11 kilowatts of solar up on the roof. On this particular day, it was putting out 7,200 watts of solar. The house was using 2,635 watts. So the rest of it was going into charging the battery. In this particular case, they have a little grid icon there. That's actually for them, since it's an off-grid system, we have the generator plugged into that. So anytime the generator turns on, it'll look for them like the grid's coming on. So there's a couple other different layouts, depending on how we make our connections. But what this does is we can actually change some of the settings remotely. So if we see that the generator, we had the generator set to turn on when the batteries got to 30% state of charge. And then the homeowner said, you know what, we can drain the batteries even more, because they didn't want the generator to turn on. So remotely, we don't have to drive under the mountain road in Londonderry all the way to the end and hope that we're going to be able to get out. We can actually do it remotely. We can change the settings. So we're having a lot of, this data isn't just for information. It actually gives us a chance to move things and manipulate things as well. So it'll be the same thing when we start talking about the electric vehicles and everything.
And just since we are touching a little bit on it, I will say a couple things about net metering, which is, so if you are going to be connected to the grid, which is going to be most folks, you have solar meter, and your consumption meter becomes your net meter. So you end up, everything that you produce on your roof or on the ground gets netted off of what you would have paid for your electric bill. The excess that you produce, so in the summer, you're going to produce way more than we use. In the winter, you produce less than we use per month, but you're able to use the excess you generated in the summer and run down some credits from your balance. And they maintain a credit balance for you that's good for 12 months. We can talk about the incentives and everything if you have a personal consultation, but that's the general gist of it. For net metering itself, for these credits that are applied to an electric bill, we can have the solar located in a different location from the electric bill. So as long as they're in the same utility, you can have two accounts linked and send solar credits from one to another. And if you want to charge your battery from your solar, you need them to be directly connected. So, so if you want a battery and solar, the twigs and twines have to connect them. And if you just want to reduce your bill and it doesn't, it's not super important when the power goes out, to have that backup charging from the solar, then you can have your solar in a different location. Okay. I am gonna, if you need a site evaluation, you can contact me at info@grassrootssolar.com. And we're gonna talk electric vehicles.
So this is my wife and I with our second Nissan Leaf. We got one back in 2013. This one replaced that. We're on our third at this point. And basically this was my furniture making shop. And so we put up enough solar on that roof to be able to run the furniture making shop and power our house as well. So now we no longer make furniture there. So now we're charging our 2 electric vehicles that we have. We power this building, we power our house. We've eliminated fossil fuels off the property entirely. And so we added some solar onto our house as well, so that we can keep both. We have 2 bills for this building and the other one. If you want to power your electric vehicle, we're getting probably 3 or 4 calls a week. I'm getting an electric car. I want to add solar, or I want to start solar. You got to figure probably 8 to 10 solar panels will be enough to power your car. We're going to talk a little bit later about how much less expensive it is to run an electric car if you're paying for electricity. If you're not paying for electricity, if you're generating yourself, it's even easier to do the math. Okay. I can tell you that we haven't gone to a gas station except for company vehicles, and I'm really bitter when I have to do that. We really enjoy driving past the gas station and powering this up from our solar panels.
And I can say that we have done the math on how many panels you need to add to a solar installation in order to power an electric vehicle. And it does depend on a couple things. So how many miles you're going to drive it, the mileage of the vehicle in question, and it's a new conversion rate because it's miles per, kilowatt hour instead of, gallon. But that's pretty straightforward. Basically, it comes down to, if you're going to drive the car 10 to 12,000 miles per year, it's around 4,000 kilowatt hours, which will add approximately 8 to 10 panels to an installation, depending on how good your roof location is. So if you've got a great south-facing roof, you might only need 8 panels for your electric vehicle. And that would be to power it for the whole year, because the majority of the time you're going to be charging at home, and it'll be plugged directly into your solar. So I'm happy to discuss retrofits with anybody. We are getting a lot of questions about that. And it's a pretty simple process and straightforward in many cases. We just add one more breaker to your breaker box, and it's pretty easy to expand the system with microinverters in place. All right.
And I will talk about, I know we're going to be talking about some of the financial programs, but I'll mention this one now. So when if you're in Vermont, one of the incentives right now, if you get a sign up for a new lease or purchase a new electric vehicle, and you're in Green Mountain Power territory, they will give you for free an EV charger, a level 2 charger.
Mhm.
You can also agree to let them use your charger several times a month, and in so doing, they'll give you a credit on your bill. So they'll help pay for your, they'll give you the charger for free. You have to pay for the installation, and then you can enter into this program. And so what we did was, they give you a couple different options, and there's a lot of fine print and you have to read it, but we agree to charge our electric car after, off peak, after 9 o'clock. After 9 o'clock, we only pay 13.4 cents a kilowatt hour instead of 17.6. So they're giving you a little bit of break. They're trying to come up with a rate design that will urge people to charge their car when there's less demand on the grid. So that's one of the programs you can enter into. And so here's a slide just showing this is in California, obviously the average energy price to filling up various, the Ford F-150, Toyota RAV4, and a Honda Civic, how much it takes to fill up a tank. And then, and their electricity is 23 cents a kilowatt hour. Here it's 17.6. To charge your Ford F-150 pickup truck, it's $22.76. And your Tesla Model 3 is $12.54. So that's just straight up, filling the tank or the battery, the difference in how much it's going to cost you. And then this is the cost per mile. So you can see
So
the big
that's a really,
difference.
yeah, it's a really big difference, and it's a good breakdown for folks who are shopping for electric vehicles. It does get a little tricky to try and convert, and the best conversion that I've seen was 100 miles per kilowatt. So I'll be happy if you have questions about you're shopping for an electric vehicle and you don't understand how to compare the mileage to miles per gallon. I'll be happy to talk to you about that, because it does take a while to wrap your head around it.
Yeah,
But you
I
know,
can
you
tell
can
you that
see
our,
3 cents per mile is a lot better than 20 cents per mile.
yeah, the our Nissan Leaf that we have now gets 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So if I'm spending 17.6 cents, well, I'm paying 13.4 cents if I were actually paying for my electricity, then you can do the math and figure out how much that is compared to a car that gets 30 miles per gallon. It ends up being a quarter of the cost. So it
Yeah.
is much, much cheaper. And that's
Mhm.
only talking about fueling the car. You know, if you want to really get into the cost of ownership of the electric car, you start to add in the oil changes, the mufflers, work on your transmission. None of that you will do with an electric car. We pay our mechanic to put the snow tires on and then take them off. While you're there, check the brakes. I mean, and the cost of ownership for electric cars is even less. So here we're just talking about filling up the tank.
Right. So, and the other, cost that you don't have to worry about with an EV is you don't have the feeling of dread when, you know, a light comes on for something that is breaking in the car, and when you go into the mechanics, you're unsure how many hundreds or thousands of dollars it's going to be to replace the part. And the reason is just because the car has fewer parts. It doesn't have a combustion engine. So there's no explosions taking place, no messy oils required, and that is a lot less maintenance. So it's one fewer headache that you have to worry about. I did want to touch on the charging infrastructure, because this is another question that we are getting a lot. So we are installing EV chargers along with solar and as a retrofit. And there are several levels of chargers. So you can have a standard electric socket, you can use an extension cord, you will get a trickle charge. It will take a long time to charge your vehicle that way, but it is possible. So you can have an electric extension cord in your car for emergency purposes. But most people are putting in a level 2 charger, which is going to charge your car overnight. So that will charge your car in a number of hours. Level 2 chargers are available from the utility. As my father said, if you sign up for a special electric vehicle charging rate, or to let them turn on or off your charging for specific times, then the utility will give you a charger for free, and then you have to just pay someone to install it. But and then a lot of people have heard of the Tesla fast chargers, the DC fast chargers. So that would be, those charge an electric vehicle up in, 20 minutes, half an hour. So there's a big difference in how quickly those charges happen. But for most people, home charging, a level 2 charger is what you're going to need. All right. And so we are also going to get into a little bit the heating and weatherizing, because these are other areas where a lot of customers have questions about how they can reduce their fossil fuel use, reduce their energy costs in other areas of your home. So right now, there is a piece of legislation going through. It's going to the Senate next. I'm sorry, I'm just going to mute you, Rob. Sorry. is going to the Senate next. So this is the clean heat standard. There is going to be money in it for weatherizing and installing heat pumps and advanced wood heat systems. So what will happen is fossil fuel companies who sell oil and gas in the state of Vermont, they will have to provide cleaner fuels, which means sourcing renewable or biodiesel or biogas. The definitions are a little wonky. Or they have to pay money to installers to do these conversions, especially for low and moderate income folks in the state of Vermont. So there will be money from fossil fuel companies to pay for this conversion. And this is specifically to pay to weatherize old and existing housing stock, to pay to install heat pumps that would use electricity instead of their product, and advanced wood heat systems. So you as a customer, you'll be able to choose which option you want to convert for your home. So expect to see this happen in the next year. I do expect it to go through in some form. There's a lot of language about how clean the gas has to be, and how companies will participate in this conversion, and whether any of the dollars will actually make it to the installers and to low-income folks. So if pay attention to a language that is going to be changing and evolving around that, but it is coming down the pipeline. And just a quick example of this is cost comparison between electric baseboard is this yellow line. Obviously that is the most expensive to heat your house with. Propane is next highest. Kerosene, which I just converted my house off of, fuel oil, and all of those are very volatile, so that you're trapped by prices that could rise and fall at any moment. And then if we can switch off of those fuels, it's much more reliable and cleaner and safer to convert to wood pellets, electric heat pumps, or wood chip burning. So all great reasons to do some fuel switching, because you can protect your energy bills from rising costs and stop pollution. So this is an energy auditor doing a blower test. So one place that I usually recommend that people start if they have questions about weatherizing or fuel switching, where they want to switch their home heat system away from fossil fuels, I recommend to every single person that they get an energy audit of their property. And this is a really great step to take if you just bought the place, or you are not sure which project to prioritize first. It gives you a really good roadmap for your property as far as priorities and which energy efficiency dollar is going to take you the furthest. So I highly recommend an energy audit with a qualified efficiency Vermont contractor. Not all contractors are the same quality. So the people that I recommend to everyone is NeighborWorks of Western Vermont. So you can find this program at heatsquad.org. I can give you contact details if you send me a request. And so Heat Squad, which is a program through NeighborWorks, they come in, you pay a fee of $150 if it is low income. If you're income qualified, then it is free to you for this energy audit. And they give you a report same day. My report was 8 pages. It took 2 or 3 hours to do the audit, but we discovered a lot of things that I needed to upgrade about my house. And the blower test itself, so this is, they vacuum seal the door, and pressurize the inside of the house. And then while the house is pressurized, they take these readings and go around, and you can actually feel at the different cracks in the doors and walls and attic exactly where cold air is coming in. And so a lot of rebate programs in the state are going to require a blower test before and after for you to get your rebate. And if you go through Heat Squad, they actually, in the energy audit, they lay out for you exactly how much different projects are going to cost you, an estimate and your estimated rebate that you could get as well, because lining up all these rebates and keeping track of what is in effect right now and what forms you need, that can get a little tedious. So they keep it all in one place for you. I really recommend this as a good step for weatherizing and deciding on what type of heat source to switch out. And then you have multiple options for when you are weatherizing your house. You can do a blown cellulose insulation, which, it's a loose paper fill that goes inside the walls. And if you are insulating your attic, like loose in the attic, do you want to share anything about the cellulose?
No, I mean, basically we're talking about making sure that when we talk to you, we want to see how many kilowatt hours you're going to be using. Well, the least expensive kilowatt hour is the one you don't have to use. And so if you can insulate your house and put in the heat pumps, then you're going to be saving tons of money from a previous heat source. So really what we're urging people is just to, we'd love to put up 40 solar panels, but if you only need 30, then let's do that. We want to right size it. We want to see how many kilowatt hours, how can you save energy and ultimately save money by going ahead and doing this. So it's just like we did with the vehicles. We did the math and saw how much we were spending on that. Same thing with the weatherization of your house.
Mm-hmm. So for my house, which was built in 1890, I found out that the walls had 4 inches of empty space in them and it had never been insulated, and they were cold to the touch in the winter. So getting blown insulation installed was actually a really effective step in cutting my heating bill basically in half. It used to feel like there was a wind coming through my house. So that made a big difference to me. And the other weatherizing options you can do spray foam, which they come in and spray basically like 5 or 6 inches of foam in between your sills and the rafters. And that can really increase the R value of your house. All of these projects do qualify for rebates of various sizes. And this is an ingenious little program. This is window dressers. So a lot of our houses in Vermont have really old windows, and they're often a source of heat loss or hard to retrofit with like a double pane glass window. So it's a window insert with, it's got wood and foam on the frame, and then this cellophane that actually holds up very well and insulates the window. So you put it right inside your window sill, and it reduces the drafts from the window. There are volunteer-led community builds throughout Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. There was a Southern Vermont build last year, and there will be another one this year. So look out for news about those. And there are Efficiency Vermont rebates for this. Technically counts as one of their DIY projects, and they're pretty affordable for the inserts. Another technology you can take a look at is hot water heat pumps. And this is going to be 3 or 4 times more efficient than a conventional electric water heater. So it's using heat pump technology. Basically, it's cold and hot exchange. So cold air gets expelled by the unit. It also dehumidifies. So if you have this unit in your basement, it's a dehumidifier like combined into a hot water heater. And they are very effective and very comfortable, and I love mine. So these can be more efficient than the electric water heater you're using. And then we have cold climate heat pumps. So this is heat and AC technology. You have an outdoor condenser. You have a wall-mounted unit. They're very quiet, and they provide AC in the summer at far less than the electric draw of window-mounted AC units, and they're far quieter, and they don't drip or anything. And in the winter, they provide really lovely heat that's very even. And the main thing to know about these units is they are about 3 times as efficient as propane or oil, down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that temperature, say for like a couple weeks per year, they are going to suck more power in order to operate, just because they have to warm themselves up before they warm the house up. So there's you have a few weeks where the power use is high, but for the majority of the year, they provide a really lovely comfort in the home. A lot of people retain some type of backup heat source to get through the coldest weeks of the year. And I'm really quite happy with the ones that I have, and rebates are still available for those as well.
And that technology has advanced pretty dramatically too. So now you're starting to see some units that say that they'll maintain their 300% efficiency down to 30 below zero. So basically what she's saying is they'll operate at 30 below, they just won't be as efficient. But there are a couple of brands now that are pushing that. So this technology has been around for a while, and now it's becoming more and more popular in the US. And we put them in our house, and it was completely a bonus that, I mean, I never put on air conditioning, just never, guess what? We need air conditioning now in the summer in Vermont. And so it was pretty nice to be able to have that with the heat pumps.
And these are what the units look like. So they're not very large. This is the wall mount, and then this is the exterior compressor unit. And that brings us to batteries. So
yeah, and I'll briefly touch on the batteries. So on the so basically what we're talking about with batteries is being able to store energy and then use it when we want to. The ones on the bottom are lead acid batteries. That technology has been around for 100 years, and it's gotten better, but it still requires a lot of maintenance and doesn't last very long even if you take good care of it. So what we're doing now is we're starting to use lithium iron phosphate batteries. They fall into the lithium ion category, but we specifically look for batteries that are lithium iron phosphate. There are some batteries out there, and everybody knows about Tesla Powerwalls. Those have cobalt in them. I don't love the cobalt. The cobalt can lead to thermal runaway. So when you see phones catching on fire or cars catching on fire, it's from the cobalt in the battery. The lithium iron phosphate doesn't have any thermal runaway. So all of the batteries that we're working with don't have any thermal runaway. They won't catch on fire. The one in the center is a Fortress battery. That particular one is 18.5 kilowatt hours of energy stored in it. On the bottom right, Simplify, those are almost the size of a lead acid battery. So we've done a number of sites where we've replaced lead acid batteries with a bunch of those, and you can use far less than you need with the lead acid. So all of these batteries, the one on the right is the Sonnen battery, on the left or SunPower has their own version of a similar type of battery. These are all becoming energy management systems now. So when I talked about the bidirectionality of the solar inverters, now the battery inverters are also bidirectional. So in these units, they'll take power in and they'll put power out. You can join into a program with Green Mountain Power. The Sonnen battery on the right, we can do that. We're not able to do it yet with the SunPower batteries. I think there's 5 different batteries that you can enter into a program with called your Bring Your Own Device program, and you let the utility use your battery. Several, like I think 5 to 8 times a month, you agree over a 10-year period that when they have their peak demand, August 12th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when everybody's got their air conditioning on and their pools are running, they want to they need more power for the grid. Rather than drawing it from the grid in Ohio and bringing it in, they'll draw it from all the batteries that are in the utility. So you're helping with grid management. In exchange for that, they will give you a rebate. So there are some programs that, the batteries, that's one way that the battery can help pay for itself. Most people, if they have a generator, you just pay for the generator and you hope to not use it. With the batteries, you can actually do energy management. So you can offer to let the utility use it, or you can do what they call self-consumption. So you can say, look, I'm generating all this solar during the day. I want to run my house off of solar during the day. I also want to run it off of solar in the evening. So you set up the battery so that during the day you're running off your solar, and at night you're running off your battery. And you can set it to, if you want to leave 50% of the battery there in case there's a power outage, you can set that, you can do that setting. So then what's happening is now you're drawing less power from Green Mountain Power. You're actually consuming your own solar. So there's a couple different ways now that the batteries can be, energy management systems.
Yes, and so right now, the only battery we have eligible for that Bring Your Own Device program is the Sonnen unit. And if you choose self-consumption, you can get a one-time payment of $850 to $950 from the utility for the value of, you're going to be drawing less from them, but you can get up to $5,200 if you participate in that 10-year agreement to share your power when the utility requests it. So those options are available for you. And when the battery is operating, it is going to feed from the solar into a sub panel where we have wired all of your protected loads. So this would be your well pump, your fridge, your freezer, furnace circulators, anything that you wouldn't want to go off during an outage. But you separate out from the main panel so that you don't have to run things like the electric clothes dryer would be, too large a load would drain your battery too fast, for example. So we run those protected loads, and during an outage, the battery is going to be isolated. So the grid power would stop feeding to the main panel, and the solar would just run the protected loads and charge up the battery, and the battery would run the protected loads.
And I can tell you, we're getting more and more calls from people who they keep hearing about the energy grid is maybe vulnerable to hacking. Certainly, there's more storms lately. So there are any of a number of reasons why it might be a good idea, especially if you live in Londonderry or that area. They seem to lose power all the time. There's certain zip codes that lose power more frequently than others.
Sandgate, Londonderry.
Yeah. So this is a couple of variations. This is the Solarc inverter. On the left-hand side, there's 5 of those Simplify batteries. And so that one is a grid-tied system. The one on the right is another off-grid, similar to the other setup that we had shown previously. Those are 2 Fortress batteries. So they figured out that they use 25 kilowatt hours a day. So they have 37 kilowatt hours worth of battery. So they know that if they're running everything as they typically did, they'll get about a day and a half run time off of those batteries. And so when we talk to you about your batteries, we're going to ask you about three things. What loads do you want to run? What loads do you want to run? And what loads do you want to run? I mean, it's all we're doing is we're doing the math. How many watts do you want to run and for how many hours? And that's going to be your battery capacity. The other calculation that we do is what out of all those loads, when you put them together, what's the maximum amount of wattage that's going to be running at any given time? If your heat pump and I mean, if your refrigerator and your well and your lights and your modem all turn on at the same time, can we use a 6 kilowatt inverter? Do we need an 8 kilowatt inverter? So this particular, the Solarc inverter will put out 8,000 watts. So that's another calculation that we have to do. How much continuous power do you need? And then what's the capacity? How many hours do you want to run for? And we help you do that math. We look at what solar you have. Is that going to be enough to be able to run the house? If your power goes off, you want to be able to run the house all night and then into the next day when hopefully there's some solar and it can help recharge your battery if the power is still out. So those are really all the calculations that we do when we talk about taking the solar that you have or the solar that you're going to put in and provide backup. What did I leave out?
Oh, yes. So a generator. So some folks have a generator with an automatic transfer switch, and they do love how seamless that is, but they want battery backup and solar to be the first line of defense for their home. And then they want to have a generator that is like last ditch, effort in an outage. So we can integrate battery backup with an existing generator. If it's an auto start generator, auto start 2-wire generator, then we can have the solar and the battery charge off of the same switch as the generator. So the automatic transfer switch will switch between the battery and the generator automatically. So if your solar charges up your battery and then it's, an outage and the solar's covered with snow, the battery will deplete and then call on the generator to refill before it comes back online. So. Yes, so we talked about self-consumption already on how the battery flattens out the mismatch between when you produce solar and when you use it, your peak times. And kind of the beauty of these lithium ion batteries that we're installing is that they're very compact. So this installation over here is lead acid batteries. They leak, they require maintenance, they lose their effectiveness if they're not maintained. And so this system had not been maintained and basically needed to all be swapped out. But because the lithium ion batteries have more power in them per battery and they're more contained, we were able to replace these 3 rows of batteries with 1 row of the lithium ion batteries. And they will never need.
This was a mess. These batteries, this is an off-grid system in Dorset, and the contractor had passed away who had put this in, so they asked me to take it over. And so in maintaining it, these batteries were going, and I told them for 2 years, your batteries are going, your batteries are going. 2 weeks before their daughter's wedding, the batteries died. And they said, we need to change the batteries. And I said, I know, I've been telling you that for 2 years. Can you do it in 2 weeks? We did, but they actually only needed 6 of these Simplify batteries to replace, this whole bank of lead acid batteries. We ended up doing 8 because they wanted a little extra capacity. But you can see the difference between those. One other thing about the lithium ion batteries is you can add to those, lead acid batteries, if they're 3 years old, they're operating at 80% of where they originally started. If you bring in new lead acid batteries into that same system, they will degrade to the same as the rest of the system. So rather than bringing up the old ones, the old ones are going to bring down the new ones. That doesn't happen with the lithium ion batteries. So they could have put in 6, and then if they decide they want a little bit more runtime, add 2 a year later. You don't want to do it 5 years later, but you do have the capability to be able to add to those.
Yeah, and here's an example of how versatile the battery installations can be, because they are more compact and they can be configured in different ways. It's easy to incorporate them into something like a bench here. So there's a whole row of lithium ion batteries under this bench. And it fits in nicely with the whole install of this home. And this solar and battery setup it is in Londonderry, and it will run that home for about 3 days, because that's how long their outages are.
And we just sent out an email, and Bob called us up and said, hey, I want to put in 2 more rows of solar panels because I'm getting an electric vehicle. So we can do that.
There we go. Yes. Yeah, we can. And 8 panels will work for him just very well there. Yeah,
and this couple, so there's an interesting project. They also live in Londonderry. They only needed 24 panels to offset their electrical usage, but they knew that in a couple of years they would be adding heat pumps and adding electric car. So we ended up putting in 36 solar panels. They took a third of the electricity they were generating and sold it to their neighbor. So she was paying 15 cents at the time. They said, we'll sell it to you for 12 cents. So they got paid 12 cents, plus they were getting an adder at the time from the utility. And they were able to run their house off of the other 24. 2 years later, they've got the electric car. They stopped that agreement with the neighbor. They also got this battery in the background here. So they're kind of doing the whole net metering. This battery is also in the BYOD program. So they got some money from Green Mountain Power. So they're really taking advantage of all the programs that are out there.
Yeah. And another battery customer. So another feature that the batteries can do is rate arbitrage, which is if you are on rate 11, which is our only time of use rate in Vermont right now. So you're charged a different amount for on-peak or off-peak power. So you can actually set up the battery so that it runs your loads during peak hours and reduces how much of that really expensive power you have to buy. And then the battery charges up from the solar, and it charges up during, the times when the power is inexpensive for you. So right now, I'm on rate 11. So I know that on peak is about 27 cents and off peak is about 11 cents. So that's a big difference. The hours are 1 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. So I try not to do my laundry on a weeknight for that reason. But having a battery gives you more flexibility in how you manage those peak demands. And this is an example of what it looks like when the battery deploys during an outage event. So there was this bomb cyclone, the power went off, and during that outage, the battery engaged. This was the time that they were using the battery power. The battery discharged and totally covered what they were using for power. And then later in the day, the sun came out. So the sun was actually charging the battery while the battery was running the whole house until the power kicked back on again. So that is, that's how it's supposed to work. And I wanted to go over, if people are confused about their new electric bills once they go solar, it does have a few added details on it, and the utility has now added these fees that they charge even solar customers. So a solar customer cannot anymore, for new installation, zero out your bill. But you will have to pay something like 15 to 20 bucks a month in non-bypassable fees. But this gives you a good example of what it looks like when you generate solar, you use energy in your home, and they break it down this funny way. So on the front of the bill, it looks like this. So it says your total that you generated for the month. That's everything that your solar system produced. But some of that was used in your home during the day while the sun was shining. And the rest of it was exported to the grid. And then a small amount was delivered to your home from the utility. So they actually reconcile all those on the back of the bill, but you end up with this net meter bank. And if you produced more than you used, your balance is going to increase, and that balance is used to offset your electric bill. Confused yet? Just wait till we see the backside of the bill, because this is what the backside of the bill looks like. Now you can see that the non-bypassable charges cannot be paid with net metering credits. That is everything highlighted in green. And let me tell you, this list has grown. It used to be 2 items, and now it is multiple items. So there's a customer charge. Every day that you are a customer, you pay 49 cents. That's great for the utility. You have this efficiency charge that goes to Efficiency Vermont program. So everyone take advantage of those rebates because you paid for them. Electric assistance program fee goes to reduce bills for low income folks. And then the power fix charges and the past storm charges, that is any weather event that wasn't taken into account in the base rates, they adjust per quarter. So if we had to take down a lot of trees last quarter, they bump that up. So over here, if you generated less than you consumed, then you're going to be net billed for the rest. So they'll say, well, you consumed 749, you produced 493. So we're not going to bill you for the 493, but we are going to bill you for the rest. And it would be net billed at your current electric rate. And then you do get, if it's your first bill after you go solar, you are charged a one-time fee that is the solar meter fee. And then certain projects are now charged an interconnection fee as well. So we find out in permitting how much your fee will be. So the first bill after you go solar is a doozy, especially compared to later bills, which will only be, again, that small monthly fee. So if you have questions about your solar bill and reading it, even after you've had solar for some time, you can always send those to info@grassrootsolar.com and we can help you break it down, because it's gotten more confusing. And we do want to touch on the incentives that are available currently. So there is that BYOD battery charging incentive. If you enter a 10-year agreement with the utility, you can get up to 5,200 per Sonnen battery. If you are doing a backup only and sharing that power with the utility, they get to drain your power from the battery, 5 to 10 times per month, 3 hours of backup per 6 kilowatts. Or you can choose self-consumption, which is if you have a Sonnen battery and you still want to be able to use your power at night, you would get a one-time payment that is a much lower rate, but still, hey, it's still money. The power company does give a free charger to anyone who signs up for one of their electric vehicle charging rates. So they have 2 different electric rates that you can choose if you want to be if you want a lower rate for charging your electric vehicle, and you get a free charger as well. Heat pump rebates are up to $400 per unit. And there's another rebate that's actually applied at sale point. So it just reduces your cost. That's from Efficiency Vermont. And heat pump water heaters, you can get a rebate from Efficiency Vermont. The other things not included here are there is going to be money for weatherization and heat pumps, especially for low and moderate income, coming from the state. And that is, we expect some action on that clean heat standard this session. So by May, we should know more where that stands. Right now, it's crossing over to the Senate. And was there another measure?
Yeah, there's also in the transportation, House Transportation Committee just passed a transportation bill that will offer rebates for buying new or used EVs, because now there's been enough EV, it's 5 or 6 or 8 years now where there are some used EVs out there. If you want a car that, it's a 3-year-old EV, it still has 115-mile range, and you live in Rutland and you work around town, it's a perfect car to get around town. The rebates that they're going to be offering to help buy used EVs are going to make them really inexpensive. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And then the other thing they're focusing on is electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So not sure if that's going to be for residential. It might be more for businesses to be able to put in, or municipalities. Basically, they want to get so that you can quickly charge your car. There's never more than 30 miles that you have to go in order to be able to quickly charge your car in Vermont. So there's a lot of federal money that's heading towards electric vehicle. Basically, they want to decarbonize the transportation sector and the weatherization sector. So you're going to see a bunch of money coming in each of those directions. We don't know exactly what those programs are going to look like, but keep your eye out. And we will certainly be, sending out emails as we hear about them. And
all right,
does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, we're ready for questions.
When we want to talk about a battery for your house, what we want to do is we want to talk about what your loads are, as I mentioned. We also need to look at the space. Most of the lithium iron phosphate batteries do not charge and discharge while they're frozen. So they need to be in a heated environment. They can be in a cool basement, that's fine. Hopefully it's a dry basement. So there are certain space requirements and temperature requirements that we need for the batteries. But we do that on an individual basis. Any other questions? Yeah, John.
In one of the slides, I thought I saw something about net metering going away. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. So when I did solar 8 years ago now, that's been a long time. Might be my 9th year. There was an extra incentive. Actually, there was a rebate in Vermont. So there was a 30% federal tax credit. There was a rebate in Vermont of $4,800 on my system. A month later, they cut that in half. In addition to that, there was an adder. So for every kilowatt hour that I generated, I got, at the time, 15 cents plus an additional 6 cents. That adder went down to 5 cents. Then it went down to 4 cents, 3 cents. You know where we're going here. Now there's going to be a subtractor. So you're not going to get retail plus, you're going to get retail minus. So that's the direction that the utility's been going. They've been making recommendations to the Public Utility Commission. The PUC listens to Green Mountain Power and all the other utilities who cry foul and say that all of you solar people are moochers and getting a free ride. They say that the solar shifts the cost of utility repairs to non-solar people. None of this is true, but so they've been slowly chipping away at net metering. When we say it's going away, I don't think it's going to disappear, but they're making it less and less financially. The financial incentives are being taken away. What's going to happen is then people are just going to say, well, then I'll just get a battery and do self-consumption and I don't need the utility. I mean, that's what they do in Hawaii. Obviously they have sun, but people just get batteries and say, their electric rate is so high, they can afford just to get solar and batteries and live off of that. So the net metering is still going to be there. It's just not as robust a program as it once was.
Okay, you scared me there for a minute.
Mhm.
And
Well,
typically,
yeah.
when you sign up, like if you put up your solar this year, you're in this year's rules. And so typically what happens is, like, my 6-cent adder was good for 10 years. So I'm about to lose that 6-cent adder. But at any time that you're in whatever Tom, when Tom did his 4 years ago, he was in in that program. He's guaranteed that for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, then we see, what it looks like. By then, when I started my system, I was paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour. Guess what? Now I'm paying 17.5, and that's about to go up over 18. So the value of your solar is going to keep going up as the utility rates go up. So you're still going to be able to offset kilowatt hours off your bill. And frankly, it's going to be more valuable because the utility rates just keep going up.
All right, do we have any last questions before we close the session?
I had another question about the batteries. So some batteries have their warranty or something is for so many cycles. And how do you monitor, how do you balance using your battery with trying to keep it under the warranty? Is there software to do that? Or because if you're letting whatever Green Mountain Power use it, or you're using it, it's going through cycles, and eventually you run to the end of the warranty that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Sonnen battery is a 10,000 cycle warranty. Okay. A cycle is from at 100% state of charge down to 0% state of charge. So you're probably never going to do that. If you're allowing the utility to draw down to 20%, that's close to a cycle. 10,000 cycles. If you went from 100% down to 0% every single day, 10,000 cycles is 27 years. So
Right. And for the Sun Vault, John, which is what I think I quoted you, that is a 4,000 cycle or 10-year warranty. And if you did a cycle every day, 0 to 100, it would be longer than the 10 years of the warranty. So it would be 10.9 years. So you aren't going to use the full capacity of the battery every day. And if you did, it would still be covered for the length of the warranty.
Good. That's helpful to know.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
have a good night.